Good afternoon. Thanks for hanging around with us. I have to thank Gary Krupnick, if he's around, of the Smithsonian for inviting me, and what a fabulous job the Smithsonian has done with this whole three-day event. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. So my talk is Seeds of Optimism, the National Seed Strategy. And I am an earth optimist, and I have to be because I'm a botanist. And if I wasn't, I wouldn't have worked for 30 years in this field. And I'll just give you some statistics. 2% of all the biological research dollars in the United States go to plants. Now that includes both agronomic as well as ecological. So your food and your ecosystem services depend upon those things, and we get 2% of the funds. The other interesting fact that I will tell you is I started my career in endangered species, and plants make up 60% of the act. They get 2% of the recovery dollars in the federal agencies. So my favorite story about that is that I had a wildlife guy come to me and say, Peggy, I think, this was at the very beginning of my career, I think that you should get the Girl Scouts to work on plant conservation. And I looked at him like, I wasn't even asking for that much money. I said to him, when you get the Boy Scouts to work on wildlife biology, I'll get the Girl Scouts to work on plant conservation. So I've had to be an optimist. But really, the true optimists, frankly, are the seeds. And my favorite quote from Hope Yaren's new book called Lab Girl is that seeds keep up the hope of their own future. And so what I want to just say to you here today is, I know all of you have seen the super bloom out in California and Nevada. At least you've heard about it if you haven't seen it. And these are optimistic seeds. They've waited in the seed bank for 10, 15, sometimes 20 years, depending upon where they are and whether the water's been there or not. So they are the true optimists in the world. We need our seed resources badly, and they have not been as well managed as they need to be. This is the only bad slide I've got, okay? Sorry, it's a downer slide, but let's just talk about extreme weather events, which they're defined as anything that's over $1 billion. And I just looked at a recent newscast of Quigley out of Illinois, and he said that in the first 3 months of 2017, so from January to March, we've had $5 billion in damages because of extreme weather events. So I want to talk a little bit about how to bring that seed and why I'm talking about weather events and give you some examples. So the first example I'll give you is Hurricane Sandy. It hit along the northeast coast of the United States in 2012. And that hurricane, after it hit, we had requests for 1 million dune stabilizing beach grasses that they needed to get back out there onto those dunes that they were going to rebuild. Nobody had 1 million dune stabilizing beach grasses, let alone the appropriate genetic stock. So they had to grow it, and it would take 5 years to get 1 million plugs of that grass. The second one I'm going to show you is in 2013, Colorado Front Range had really, I think it was like 15 inches of rain over a 1-week span, and they lost 24 counties were affected by it. The floods affected 200-mile north to south. They didn't have the seed either to rebuild those areas. And that picture on the left is the one from the Colorado Front Range flood. So I guess the question in my mind is, how do we want to manage our seed resources for our restoration purposes after all of these floods, droughts, wildfires? I work for the Bureau of Land Management. We manage 1/10 of the United States land mass, mostly in the West and up in Alaska. It's not the way we need to be doing business. And I'll tell you one of the, an example of how serendipitous it was, and that was the Bastrop County, Texas wildfire in 2011. They ended up just by sheer luck, and serendipity really means coincidence, fate, karma is another definition of serendipity. A forester had left 1,100 pounds of loblolly seed in a grocery store warehouse refrigerator. And they forgot it. And it was lucky for them that they did forget it, because basically the Lost Pines area of Texas has the westernmost area of the loblolly pine, or westernmost part of the range, and it's the most drought-tolerant species of pine, and they lost it in this fire, and it was the most it was the highest costing wildfire in Texas history. We got trees were produced from the seeds that were forgotten in that warehouse refrigerated warehouse. So that's the kind of serendipity that we don't really need to be doing for our seed resources. Native seed is a critical natural resource. It's been largely underutilized, underprotected, and not very well managed. And that's part of why we decided we needed to get a seed strategy. And I think there's lots of folks talking about infrastructure. But the plants and the native seeds are the true green infrastructure of this country. And we need them to build ecological resilience into these native plant communities. So what is the National Seed Strategy? Well, here's a physical copy of it, and I did bring a couple of them down here, and if folks want to get a copy, they're welcome to. The vision on this seed strategy is the right seed in the right place at the right time. And our mission is to ensure the availability of genetically appropriate seed to restore viable and productive plant communities and sustainable ecosystems. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. There's 4 goals that are the main area of work that we need done to have a successful implementation of a seed strategy. And the 4 goals in the seed strategy are national seed assessment. We need to know, where do we need the seed? We need to know who's got the capacity, who's got the facilities, who's got the research. And so that's something that we've been talking to the National Academy of Sciences about. We had a scoping meeting back in February on it. There's a tremendous amount of research that needs to be done. The second goal is research to improve that seed supply. In terms of most plants that make up the native plant communities, unless it is a commodity like timber, we don't know how native is native. We don't know if we can take the seed from Cape Cod and move it to Canada. We don't know if we can take the material from Cape Cod and move it down to the Carolinas. But frankly, that's a lot of what's been happening in the past. So we need the research to improve that seed supply. We need to get the decision tools together. We need to make sure that the land managers understand the research, and so we need decision tools to be made. We also need to communicate about it, because most people don't recognize it. So we put together, after the seed strategy, we put together a business plan, and I had one of our folks say, $358 million? And I was like, well, we're talking 12 agencies that were instrumental in putting this thing together. It's a 5-year plan. It's about $7 million per agency per year. And in terms of the amount of damage from fires, droughts, and other things, it's a drop in the bucket. I don't think it's that expensive. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but suffice it to say that this is our native plant material process, and it's very complex, and I'm trying to make it with this schematic as easy as possible, but basically it's what we have to do for every species to go from a wildland seed collection all the way around to the ultimate goal of restoring those native plant communities out there. And the research aspect of it is on the, I guess it would be on your left side, evaluation and development, field establishment, seed production. This program, it was never meant to be the federal government doing it. We've got the Plant Conservation Alliance is helping us, and it is a private sector enhancement program of work. This is part of the first part of what we've done so far. We've made 22,000 collections of 5,000 or more taxa. We've gone mostly in the West because that's where my agency is, and we've been the ones that have been spending the most money on it, but you can see there's partners across the country, and that's what this seed strategy is hoping to do. We've developed a conservation and land management intern program. We've put, these are recent college graduates. We've had over 1,200 that have come out into the field with us and helped us do the collection. We couldn't do it without them. There's some of the seed collections with regards to the sage grouse, because that's probably the biggest issue for my agency right now. We're looking at where we need to do the next ones. We need to get the plants planted. We're using a sustainability in prison program, and these are the sagebrush that they're growing for the sage grouse. We've got 11 prisons in 6 western states that we're working with. So ultimately, what do we need? To make this successful, we need a network of networks, and we need a network of seed collectors, a network of seed researchers. We need a network of facilities where we can store the seed. We need a network of seed growers and farmers, and we need a network of, I'm getting there. We need a network of facilities in which, and restoration ecologists that know how to get the right seed in the right place at the right time. Thank you.